Welcome to a new episode of the Opening Bid Unfiltered podcast. I'm Yahoo Finance Executive Editor Brian Sozzi. Like I always say, this is the podcast that will make you a smarter investor, period, and you're definitely going to get smarter after this one. I want to welcome in a very special guest, someone I've been following for several years, notably on LinkedIn, where he posts lots of really amazing stuff. Norges Bank Investment Management CEO Nikolai Tangent. I should also note he's also a fellow podcaster. The podcast is called In Good Company. Nikolai, good to see you.
Likewise.
For those not familiar of what you do at Norges Investment Bank, take us through it a little bit. I think so many folks know that you oversee the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. How did you get this position, and take us inside of what this sovereign wealth fund does?
Yeah. So when they found the oil in Norway in 1969, they decided to put it into a fund. In some countries, they had spent the money, but in Norway, they decided to save it instead. And so they kicked off the fund in 96, and it has grown to roughly $1.7 trillion. And we invest globally. We own roughly 1.5% of all the listed equities in the world. We have a large bond portfolio, and we own a lot of properties and renewable infrastructure. So that's what we do.
The returns that the fund makes, where do they go?
Well, they go into the state budget. So first of all, we spend roughly 3% of the fund every year, and that accounts now for more than 20% of the Norwegian state budget. So it kind of pays for one of five schools, hospitals, roads. That's how it's spent.
I just want to bring that stat you mentioned right back up here. Owns almost 1.5% of all shares in the world's listed companies. I mean, that's a big responsibility.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility. But I would say we are helped by the Minister of Finance, which make a very good mandate for us, which we follow. So we are relatively index near in what we do. And then, of course, we are 700 people here working hard day in, day out. So it's not my responsibility alone, thankfully.
How did you get into the field of investment management?
I just love it, right? I think it's the most interesting job you can have because in investing, you have to be on top of the companies, what they make, psychology, geopolitics, defense, all these kind of things. And it changes just all the time. And in particular now, things are being turned upside down every so often, and combined with huge changes in geopolitics and technology development, I think just makes it the most interesting place you can be.
How are these changes geopolitical things have certainly gone upside down. It's been quite the past 6 or 7 months. How has that changed how you go about putting money to work?
Well, they changed very little in terms of how we go about. And I think that's the important thing, because when you are in a situation where things change so fast, very often doing little is the most difficult thing. And I think this is an environment where it's a huge advantage to have a strict mandate and a very, very long time frame on what we do.
You, I would imagine, have a unique perspective on the United States. Here in the United States, lots of conversation on President Trump's tax bill, what it might mean to deficits, and the general thinking is this is going to add big time to deficits. From your perspective, how do you view the U.S. economy?
Yeah, we first of all, we never have a view on politics, okay? But what we do have a view on, of course, is some of the effects of politics. We do observe that the budget deficit is quite large. That's not only the case in the U.S., but across the world, right? We are at roughly $100 trillion, according to IMF. And the question is whether there will be a time where investors will certainly think, hey, we want a higher coupon for lending money to these various governments. And that's potentially when we could see a kind of an uplift in interest rate levels generally.
Does that change how you invest? And I bring that up because I view what you do as you're the ultimate long-term investor. You're putting money to work today that will earn a return 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. But if our debt levels in the U.S. are going to go up pretty significantly off of already high levels, does that change how you think about businesses?
Well, of course, it helps to be the reserve currency of the world, right? So the U.S. is in a bit of a special situation here, but you never know when the point is coming where investors suddenly decide that the debt level is too high and we want a higher price.
So you own close to what, 9,000 stocks. Like, why so many stocks?
We basically own the world, and I think when you are such a large investment fund, you need to be widely diversified. And so what we have a mandate which is telling us to be widely invested. We are now roughly just under 55% invested in the States, and the rest is in Europe and the rest of the world. We've got roughly 70% equities and 30% bonds. And so I think to be widely diversified and really long term is the way to navigate these markets.
Within the portfolio, you do have a pretty large bunch of holdings in tech. I mean, I look on Yahoo Finance, you can see you're a top holder in some of the biggest names like Microsoft, Alphabet, Meta, you name it. Why do you like tech?
Well, we are, when companies do well and get really, really big in terms of market capitalizations, we own automatically quite a lot of it, okay? So Microsoft is our biggest holding, and that's because it is a very, very large company. Now, what we are seeing is that we have a bigger concentration level in the portfolio than we've had in the past. So now our top 10 holdings will account for 20% of the fund, which of course is a different type of risk than we've seen in the past, in particular because the largest holdings typically are all tech related. And so this type of factor risk we for sure haven't seen before.
I imagine, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Nikolai, but this large concentration in tech names, this is a really strong bet, I imagine, on the future of AI impacting so many parts of the world.
That's true. And, we are, for sure, AI will have a huge impact on how we work. We are seeing it. We think we increased productivity by 15% last year by utilizing AI in everything we do. We think we can open up another 20% productivity gap this year by, again, just making sure that we get the message across from the top. We have ambassadors being trained in AI several times a week. We have mandatory events across the firm. So we really kind of carpet bomb the organization with AI initiatives, and it really works, It's driving productivity. We're getting rid of some boring tasks, and it's super interesting to see what it does to us.
Well, it makes you...
Now, whether the valuations of the companies is more than discounting this, I think is very, very difficult to say.
Well, yeah, let me lean into that, because as an ultimate long-term investor, is it hard to identify when a stock might be overvalued? I mean, because theoretically, you're holding for years. So who am I to think that Microsoft is overvalued here in 30, 40 times earnings? Maybe it grows even faster.
No, I think you're right. I think it's very, very tough to know when things are overvalued. I mean, generally speaking, I think it's easier to see when something is undervalued. I think it's easier to see panic. I think it's more difficult to see euphoria and greed and really know when to exit something. That's just a general observation I have after having been in the market for a long time.
Are we seeing euphoria in markets today? Markets around the world hitting records?
It's a difficult one. I think we are seeing some signs of euphoria. But whether that's it, I think is very, very tough to say.
Why do you think investors are so optimistic?
Well, I think investors are optimistic partly because of the prospects of what AI can do to productivity and what it can do in terms of holding price increases down by improving efficiency. And now, of course, you also have the humanoid robots coming, which will make sure that we are in a situation with excess supply of labor. So, there are some positive long-term scenarios here.
You mentioned...
I think also it's difficult to know what's the alternative to having money in the stock market. There isn't any, it's not an easy answer to this.
But you also own a good bit of real estate.
Yeah, we do. And we have continued to add to our real estate holdings. We have nearly 1,000 properties around the world. We have big holdings in logistics. We own, quite a lot of property where you are sitting in the middle of Manhattan. Also in many European cities such as London and Paris.
You mentioned at the top, briefly, some of the things you look for when putting money to work, but you mentioned psychology. How important is psychology for you before putting more money in a stock?
Well, I would say generally psychology is just super important, and you have to identify these situations where you are right and nobody agrees with you, right? And I think it's very, very important to identify, the level of panic where you wanna add to your holdings, and of course the levels of euphoria where you wanna take some off. So observing investor psychology is one of the most important things I do.
Where, outside of your holdings in tech, Nikolai, where else are you concentrated in terms of stocks?
Well, we would have a portfolio which reflects everything that goes on in the world, right? We have big holdings in the big consumer companies. We have holdings in the energy companies. We have big holdings in pharma. So we would be most places.
Are you, I imagine, what's your view on green technologies? Of course, Norway has been drilling for decades. Do you have money to work in that space?
Yeah, we do. We really believe in some of the large integrated energy companies, and we also have invested in renewable infrastructure in Europe and in the US. Now we appreciate that these type of assets are not really in favor for the moment, which gives us a good opportunity to add to our holdings there. So we think we'll get better returns in some of these projects than we got in the past.
All right, hang with us, Nikolai. We're going to go off for a very short break. We'll be right back on Opening Bid Unfiltered. All right, welcome back to Opening Bid Unfiltered here at the NASDAQ in Times Square. Having a fun chat here on all things stocks and investing with Norges Investment Management CEO Nikolai Tangen. Just a fascinating, he oversees the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world in Norway. How do you spend your day? Given the responsibilities of your job, Nikolai, I imagine you're always on the road. But this job has to weigh on you. This is not like a normal portfolio management job or even a hedge fund manager like you were before.
Yeah, no, I think I have the best job in the world. It's just super interesting. I spend time on investing. I spend time with the teams here. I spend time on technology and where we're going with that. I spend time on the organization with the stakeholders. I meet with CEOs around the world. So I just learned so much about what's going on. I think it's the ultimate job in asset management.
When you meet your fellow CEOs, the CEOs of the companies you own, what are those meetings like, and what do you ask them about?
Well, I ask them about different things. I ask them about the industry which they're in, what's at the top of their mind in terms of topical things for their companies and their industries. I talk to them about the market positions and how you gain and lose market share in your business. But I also spend a lot of time on the corporate culture in the various companies, because I think in the long term, it's so often the corporate culture which decides whether a company is going to be successful. You've got two companies which seemingly seem to be doing the right thing, whether they both make sneakers or elevators or beverages, and then one company is doing so much better than the other. And why is that? And it's so often some of the kind of softer things in the corporate culture. So if you can identify some of those issues, that is just so interesting.
Just given everybody that you've gotten to meet and the investments you have in the fund, is there a favorite CEO or two that you just really like, that you like hanging with and talking business?
I like hanging with a lot of people. And for sure, you want to hang with a lot of different people, because that's how you learn and that's how you educate yourself. And that's how you get new ideas, So you want to meet with people who do different things from yourself. And you also want to speak with people who got a different opinion from your own opinions. That's the important thing.
Is it tough to have conversations with fellow CEOs that maybe sometimes could be doing a better job?
I think we all can do a better job, I think we all need to try to improve ourselves continuously. That's part of the game here.
Mm-hmm. What made you start the podcast In Good Company?
Yeah, you know what? We had, I thought, we have access to a lot of the CEOs because we have big ownership stakes in them. And instead of me just sitting there with the CEO and learning about the companies and what they're doing, I thought, hey, let's share it with the Norwegian population and students and business leaders across the world. So we kicked it off as a pilot, and it's turned out to be now one of the leading business podcasts in the world. And we've had 125 episodes with, the top leaders in the world, from Bill Gates to Elon Musk to the heads of the top banks, pharma companies, you name it. It's just been incredibly interesting.
No, it's
and we also learned so much that we are implementing in our own firm. Some of these leadership methods and methodologies, which are very, very interesting.
I had the opportunity, Nikolai, to talk to Bill Gates too on Opening Bid, and it was a fascinating conversation. Talked about his childhood, but his thoughts on semiconductors. My big takeaway was it's amazing how fast his brain works and how forward-looking it is. What was your takeaway from that, Jed?
It's a very humbling experience to talk to Bill Gates. I think what I love with Bill is just the way he learns, the way he's got dinners at home, put together people in various fields, applies the same rigor and methodology he has done to make money in order to give it away. I think he's a real hero, of course.
One person I haven't been able to talk to that I didn't get, Nikolai, is Jack Dorsey. So thanks a lot for one-upping me on that one. I mean, how is that? He hasn't done much. He hasn't talked a lot in recent years, but in many respects, he had not only laid the foundation for X and social media and Twitter, but he's also a big player in stablecoin and crypto. Are you a big believer in crypto? And after that conversation like that, if you weren't a believer, do you become more of a believer?
Well, it's a very, very good question. So we do not have in our mandate to invest in crypto. So I probably haven't done as much work as I should. But it's just a fascinating area where I need to dig more, and get to learn more.
Do you think your fund will have a crypto component over the next few years? No. Too risky?
Well, I just don't, for the mandate to change, it needs to go through the parliament there and through white papers and so on. I think it'd be tough to see that the Norwegian politicians would like to put a lot of the fund into crypto. I'd be very surprised.
Do you view it? I know you're still looking into crypto. Do you view it as a rival to the dollar?
I don't think I have. I haven't got a very strong view on this.
We here in the U.S., Nikolai, there was some talk earlier this year of the U.S. creating its own sovereign wealth fund. We haven't heard much since from the Trump administration. How hard is it to create a sovereign wealth fund? Because I think here in the U.S., we got this news and was thinking we're going to flip a switch and we're going to have a sovereign wealth fund, but it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't work that way necessarily. I would say, first of all, you need to allocate capital to it, right? I would say what has worked for us in Norway is one, to have a very long-term view on what we do. It has broad political anchoring. It means that when you have a change in parliament or a government, you do not change the way we invest, right? That's very important. We have a spending rule, which means that you only take out 3% every year. And then we have a huge transparency. We are the most transparent fund in the world. So I think these factors combined have made this a successful kind of venture.
I'm going to assume that the U.S. will get a sovereign wealth fund. How disruptive would that be to markets? And not necessarily in a bad way, in a good way, because now you have the U.S. with all of its capital, a lot of it being pooled into this fund. I imagine it could really drive up a lot of market values.
Well, I think that depends on how you look at it and how they choose to invest the money, how concentrated they are, and so on. The U.S. stock market is massive. It's just like huge. So for one fund to make such a big difference, I'll be a bit surprised if it made a huge difference in market valuations.
Sure. In the last couple minutes of the podcast, Nikolai, we always love to get some hot takes from our guests. Nothing prepared on this one, just enjoying this conversation. I came across you by doing my research or due diligence on Tesla. Now you're still a holder in Tesla, I imagine. What are your thoughts on this company? It seems that, at least from my perspective, this stock is detached from the fundamentals and is being driven a lot by Elon and his posts, his back and forth with the president, and not necessarily on what they're doing on autonomous and various other robots and making cars. How do you see it? Well,
I think you're right. I think there are a lot of elements which impact the share price of this company. I haven't got a particular strong view either way. Tesla was one of the first electric cars into the Norwegian market, and it was, EVs have been heavily subsidized in Norway, and so has a very, very high penetration here. But in terms of view on the stock itself, I haven't got a strong view.
Do you view Tesla as more of a tech play or an auto play?
I think it's all the above. I think there are many factors impacting the valuation of Tesla. Interesting.
Have you made up with Elon? Now, you guys voted against his pay package. Are you friends now? You tight? You're having dinner together? Are things cool?
I have not had dinner with Elon. I never met him in person. I had a podcast with him, which was very interesting, but I haven't spoken with him since.
Interesting. Will those fences be mended? Are you trying to mend them, or are you just good leaving things where they are?
We have no. I don't think we have anything unspoken.
Okay.
We had a great podcast. We meet with management of Tesla and give overview. They are professional. We are professional. I don't think there's any problems there.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Really enjoy all of your work. Norges Bank Investment Management CEO Nicolai Tangen, and of course, the host of the In Good Company podcast. I encourage you to listen to that podcast. Go back and watch those interviews with Elon and Jack Dorsey. A lot of good, interesting perspectives there. Nicolai, good to see you.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's it for the latest Opening Bid Unfiltered podcast here at the NASDAQ in Times Square. Like I always say, please hit us with all those likes on social media and the podcast platforms and YouTube. I appreciate the feedback. It helps us get better. Talk to you soon.